and right on time. So let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, great. Well, good morning and welcome to Acumen's Webinar Wednesday series. The focus of today's webinar is Sage 300 Tips, Tricks, and Tools. This is Jen McGraw with Acumen, and on behalf of our team, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us today. Before we get started, I wanted to go over a few housekeeping notes. The phone lines will be in listen-only mode and muted throughout the presentation. However, your questions are very important to us. We will set some time aside for Q&A at the end of the webinar. We are also mindful of your time. If you're unable to answer any of the questions, if we're unable to, no need to worry. We will actually follow up with the questions and get those answers to you after the webinar. This webinar is also being recorded. If you happen to miss a helpful tip or trick, rest assured you will receive access to a link with the webinar recording. Next slide, please. I'd like to take a minute to introduce our account management team. Nick Nabozny is our VP of Account Management. He will be taking us through today's webinar. Again, this is Jen McGraw, and I'm one of the account managers on our team along with Max Munz. At the end of the webinar, Max will be leading us through the Q&A, so please be sure to use the chat box that's available for any questions that you have throughout the webinar, and we will get to them at the end. Without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Nick.
Thanks very much, Jen. Just a very quick agenda. As you all know from the invite, we're here today to talk about some tips and tricks in Sage 300. This is a course that I've written kind of over the years. I do have a consulting background. I am on the account management team now, but the first about 18, 19 years of my Sage 300 or ACPAC life have been on the consulting team. So picked up a few things over the years that I've found that are very helpful for users. We're also going to talk about some Acumen Tools, which are some really nice little programs that our development team has built for you guys to really help with efficiencies for data entry. And then, of course, we'll open it up to Q&A at the end. So the goals today are really to just uncover some little, not secrets, but little lesser known areas of Sage 300 that might help you on a day-to-day basis. You know, that the goal of our account management team really is to make your life better. So we hope that some of these tips and tricks in Sage and also some of these Acumen tools will really do that for you. So let's jump right into it. And I'm going to switch between the PowerPoint and Sage 300. So I'll have to jump back and forth a little bit, but let's start with some multi-company functionality. A lot of our clients are in the hospitality industry, so they do have many different companies or properties set up. A lot of our clients in other different industries are in the same situation. Well, there's a few different things that you can do to really help identify what company you're in and then also limit what companies are available. Now, the company drop-down list is now set up so that you can limit who has access and who sees what companies. And then you can also change the colors of each company so you can help identify it. Well, let's take a quick look at that. When I log into Sage here, and I click the Open Company box, you can see this now drop-down. I cannot click anything in here until I put in my username and password. If I put in the admin password, as the admin, I have access to the two databases that I have set up, Sample Company Inc. and Sample Company Limited. Well, if I turn on the ability to restrict these companies, and I say, let's go in as Nick, Nick only has security set up for Sample Company Inc., so I don't even see the others. So I can greatly reduce the number of companies here and make it a little bit easier for Nick to find the company that he's looking for. Now, once I do log in, you can see that my Sample Company Inc. is set up with a blue background, and every screen that I open up, and the invoice entry screen here, matches that. So it also gives me the database ID at the top of every window so I can tell what company I'm in. I can also visually see that. Now, if I was to log in as admin into the Sample Company Limited here, you'll see that I have that one set up as a red company. So I can see and very quickly identify that I'm in a different company. This comes from the database setup section of Sage 300. You do have to have your admin do this for you. But whenever you create databases, you can go into them and edit them and select colors. So just a nice visual way to identify what company I'm in, because we know a lot of our users out there are working with multiple companies on a day in, day out basis. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint here and start to get into some data entry shortcuts. Now, everyone is of course running Windows, and everyone has a mouse, and everyone uses the mouse, myself included. But if I'm really a data entry person and I want to get very fast with that, these are some kind of keyboard shortcuts that I think will help you kind of leave that mouse to the side and navigate the Sage 300 screens a lot faster. So we're going to talk about something called Alt+, the underlined letter. That's actually a Windows feature, so you'll see that in Excel or Word or any Windows program. We're going to talk about the plus key to launch a calculator in a numeric field. Everyone's probably already tabbing through the fields to move through, but we're going to show Shift tab to move backwards, and then also Control tab to scroll through the actual tabs on a Sage screen. So let's go back over to Sage for a moment. And we're going to go back into Sample Company Inc. here, and let's open up our vendor screen. And now when I open this vendor screen and I select a vendor here, if I hit my Alt key, you can see, and it may be a little difficult on here, but there's a bunch of letters that get underlined up at the top, the F for file, and the T for settings, and H for help, and S for save, D for delete, all the tabs, E for address, P for processing, V for invoicing. I can very quickly do Alt-V to move to the invoicing tab, or Alt-C to close the window, or Alt-S to save my changes, Alt-H to launch help. So, I can navigate this window, again, staying on my keyboard and avoiding, grabbing that mouse again and kind of slowing myself down. Now, when I am working with a numeric field, and again, it can be any numeric field. You probably won't do it very often on the credit limit. You may do this more in journal entries, of course, or retainage calculations, or job costing situation, or on a purchase order. But just to speed things up here, I'm going to stay in the credit limit and show you that it's truly any numeric field. If I click on the plus key on my keyboard, I can launch the calculator. And what's really neat is I can do my calculation, 5,000 times 3 equals, and divided by 2. I can do whatever calculation I want, times 100. That's how we calculate our credit limits. It's mostly based on some crazy physics and crazy math in our company here. And I can paste that value back in, and now they have a $75,000 credit limit, and I can do Alt-S to save that. Okay. So I can move through that very, very quickly and launch that calculator. Now, as we talked about, everyone's probably tabbing through the fields already. Shift tab will allow me to go back, though. So again, I don't have to pick up the mouse and click back in that field. I can Shift tab and very quickly go back and correct something. If I wanted to put Suite 101 and I might pass that, I can go back up and fix that. And oops, that was Suite 102, and Alt-Save and save that. And then lastly, I can use Control tab to scroll through the different tabs on the screen. So you see all these different tabs at the top of the screen here. I can very quickly scroll through them. Again, or I can use the Alt key, Alt-O to go to optional fields, or Alt-M to check the comments tab. So just a few ways to very quickly navigate that screen. Okay, let's talk about a few more now. So the next one I want to talk about is the spacebar and how the spacebar can be used in a lot of different places in the Sage 300 or Apex system. We'll talk about the function keys, the F1, F5, F7, F9. What do all those keys do? And we'll also talk about copying like data when entering some new information. Let's jump back over to Sage for a moment here. And my favorite place to talk about the spacebar is in the bank section in the bank reconciliation module. But the spacebar acts as a toggle, and it turns things on or off. So whenever you see a yes or no, an on or off, or a checkbox in the Sage system, your spacebar will work very, very nicely. And this is a very popular one. So, I can, of course, grab my mouse and double-click and set things to be reconciled in my bank rec here. But I can also use my spacebar to do that. And I can use spacebar and arrow keys, to very quickly move through and do that. You'll see this in, when I'm posting an AR cash receipt and I want to apply that to invoices, and there's that yes or no column. Or I'm doing an AP payment and I want to turn, the yes or no off to say which invoices I'm paying. Any tick boxes that I mentioned, those will be spacebar. You can toggle them on or off. Next, let's talk about the function key. So at the top of our keyboard, we have all these F keys. Well, first is F1. So if I click F1 or I hit F1 key, it launches the context-sensitive help. Now, they did away with the manuals several years ago, which everyone was upset about at first, but what they did, I think, is a good thing. They took all that information and all that data and put it into the help files. So now, if I'm confused or I have a question about a specific screen, I just open that screen and hit F1, and it takes me right to the help related to that section. So it brings me to here, in this case, the bank rec statement screen. And it'll tell me everything I want to know about it with links to other sections and help me. But what I want to point out here is this section called Fields and Controls. And I think this would be kind of a hidden one in my opinion, and one of the most important parts of help. So if I click on Fields and Controls, it's going to open up a little section that will give me a blurb or a bit of information about every single field and every single button that I have on the screen behind me. So if I'm unsure of what to put in the bank account number field or on the reconciliation tab, what does this deposits field mean, or what does transaction do, or what choices do I have for sort by? So you can go through and open up, and read about every single field or every drop down or every type of every tab on every screen. So I think that's really, really helpful if you're unsure about a field or something like that, and you may not know what to select. Now, the F5 key will launch our Finder. And of course, everyone's clicking on the magnifying glass here, and that launches it as well. But the F5 key does the exact same thing. That allows me to launch that Finder. And if I'm done, I can select it, or I can hit Alt-C. Again, remember our Alt plus the underlined letter command to close that window if I don't want that. And I could do Alt-C again to close my bank rec window. And no, I don't have to save it again, leaving that mouse behind wherever possible. Now, the F7 key works as a refresh button for the Sage screen. So if I say, okay, let's go ahead and put in a new I want to do an AP payment entry here for a particular vendor. I'll open that up. I'll click that to create a new batch. And you've seen this every day, right? We'll pick our vendor, and I'll pick one that's, of course, not on hold, so I can pay them. Now, I've selected my vendor as I'm tabbing through here, and everyone knows that I have to come over, grab the mouse, and click on the Go button in order to bring up all of my invoices. Well, if I hit the F7 key, that acts as that refresh button. So whenever you see a Go button in the Sage screen, those double blue arrows or the page with the blue arrow now, F7 will refresh the screen. It's really the same as the Go button. Okay. And then also the F9 key is what we call a zoom window. And in a lot of places, I like to show that here in purchase order entry, but you'll see it again in journal entries and across lots of different entries. But if I have a question, even if I maximize this and I have a big wide monitor here, I can see a lot of fields, but I can't see everything, so I do have to scroll. And maybe I have a question about something and I need to scroll over and I'm not seeing it. Well, the F9 key will zoom into that line. So if it's an entire journal entry line or a purchase order line like we're seeing here, you can now see all of the fields in the row behind me up on one screen. So I can see it very nicely. Some clients really like to work here. They prefer this. So I can click plus, and you can see that added a new line in the background, and I can go through and add new items or continue on with my purchase order. And I can see everything in one place. So just another option, another way to really work with the grid at the bottom of the screen. You can zoom in and see everything. Now, let's talk about copying like data. This is a neat one that I don't think is fairly common. So if I'm, say, adding a new GL account here, and I'm going to go into the account screen, as I open up any static data, right, accounts, vendors, customers, inventory items, it opens up the blank screen. And I can just start typing in an account and say, okay, this is going to be revenue. But what happens now is I have to set everything, right? I have to set my structure, my normal balance, my groups, all of these settings that you have for, say, a vendor or a GL account have to be set before I can add that. Well, a faster way, in our opinion, to do this is, let's clear this out again. Let's say this new revenue account is going to be the same as an existing revenue account. So I'm going to pull up an existing sales account, and I'm just going to make this 4007 now, and I'm going to change the description. So all I did was change the field at the top, or the index field, and that's the account number or the vendor ID or the customer number or the inventory item code. And you can see that that has changed my button from save to add, because it knows now I'm adding a new one. But all of my settings have come through for me. So if I just change the description to sales miscellaneous, I don't have to set the normal balance anymore. The account group is set for me. I certainly can override things. These are only defaults, so I can change things. But now I can just click add and add that to the database. And really now that's taken me 2 clicks to do that, rather than setting up all of these different things. So whenever you can, it's really helpful to copy some of that like data whenever you're entering some new static information. Okay, next we're going to talk about user interface customization and how to change the screens themselves for users. You might want to hide some fields for faster data entry. You might want to hide some fields with sensitive data in them, or you might want to hide some specific buttons. Some clients like to take the delete key off the screen, and there's some users out there, we've all worked with them, that can't be trusted not to touch that delete button. So you can actually take it off the screen if you want to. Let me show you how to do that. Up here in Administrative Services, there's a section called UI Profiles. And my favorite, I do this on demonstrations all the time, but my favorite real-life example of this was we had a client that wanted to start all of their vendors on hold. So we did that. So when we set up a vendor here, when they started a new vendor, it started them on hold. And what we did was they were really looking for paperwork to be in order before they would start cutting checks. So they wanted certificate of insurance and the W-9, the contract signed, and their controller was responsible for making sure all of that paperwork was in order. So we said, okay, let's go File, Customize here. Again, no programming, just clicking through the CAN system and through the CAN settings. We created an accounts payable working profile. And then what you see here are all of these tick boxes are all the buttons, fields, and tabs on the screen behind it. So I can come through and find here on hold, and we actually took that off the screen for all of the AP users except for the controller. And there were other AP users that absolutely had full rights to add, modify, and delete vendors. And they wanted it that way. They needed people to be able to set up vendors because they added quite a few of them, and they needed that situation to be open enough for them to do that, but they didn't want anyone to see the on hold button. So we physically removed that from the screen. And then of course the user, even though I have full access to vendors, I can't change a field I cannot see. And as I said, we've had clients take off the delete button. We've had clients hide, statistical information. If you don't want someone to see any of the numbers, if they don't need to do that, or they just need to be able to see, kind of vendor demographic information, you can go in and hide information. And so I do that. I create the profile and turn on and off the fields I want. And then in Administrative Services, I can just assign the UI profile to individual users. So I might say Nick is going to be in the AP profile ID. So when I log in as Nick now, I won't see the on hold button or checkbox for a vendor. So you can assign that by user, by company. Okay, scheduling. So there's always been a function for scheduling in Sage 300. You know, as far back as really the DOS days, where you can do recurring journal entries, recurring payments, recurring cash receipts if you want to. But what I want to focus on is something called reminders to these schedules. So let's take a look at that. So here in Common Services, I can come into scheduling and I can set up my schedules. And there's no limit, right? You can have different schedules for different users or different things. You can come through and say, okay, I want a weekly schedule, a daily schedule, a quarterly, every 3 months on the third Tuesday. So it's pretty flexible on how you can set them up. But what we don't see a lot of clients take advantage of is this reminder section here. And I could say, okay, I want to remind a specific user or all users, and set up which user you want, X number of days in advance of the actual scheduled start date or the trigger for that particular event. And let me show you what that does. So I won't save any changes to that, and then I'll simulate logging in again. Let me launch another instance here, and I'll log in as the admin user where I have that reminder turned on. I'll say admin into Sample Company Inc. And when it's time to generate whatever that schedule is attached to, the journal entry or the accounts payable, recurring payables batch, it pops up automatically for me, and I could just select it and click process. And that's it. My entry is now created for me. I don't have to find it. I don't have to go to periodic processing and remember which one to set. It's going to do that automatically for me because I've turned on that reminder function. So again, we see a lot of scheduling out there, but we don't see a lot of that reminder being used, which I think is really helpful. Okay, next. This one I bet most of the users on the call don't know, but I think most users will really like. So there is a function underneath the properties of each icon that's called Start Multiple Copies. Let me talk about what that means and how you might use that. So here in Sage, okay, let's say I'm working on an accounts payable batch, right? I'm getting my entries in for the day. I'm going through and I'm entering this in, and my boss comes over and says, hey, while you're doing that, someone just came in. I need to get a checkout. And you say, okay, let me minimize this so I don't lose it. Let me go back to invoice entry. Oh, that pulled this one up. Oh, can it wait? No, it can't. I need to get it right away. Okay, let me add this and try to come back and figure it out. Well, what you can do actually for any of the icons in Sage 300 is minimize this, right-click on your icon and go to Properties, and select Start Multiple Copies of that icon. Now what happens is when I have this here open and I click on it again, it's going to bring me up to a new instance of that same icon. So we see clients doing this with journal entries, with statistical data, with static data, like having multiple vendors up if you're comparing vendors in the same company and you want to look at the statistics screen. But you see it launched a new instance, and I can go right ahead, create batch number 30, get this invoice in or this payment or whatever the case might be, and get my boss satisfied and off my back, and just come back to the data entry I'm doing. So I can start multiple copies of the same icon in a single company. So that's again, that one is definitely, I would call, pretty hidden because it's under the icons properties section here, but it can be pretty powerful in certain situations. Next, we're going to talk about modifying the Sage 300 desktop. So each user, if you give them the permissions to do so, it is a security setting. You can actually change your Sage 300 desktop experience. And by that, I mean you can create shortcuts to programs. You can create shortcuts to Sage icons. You can create shortcuts to macros, reports, other programs like Word, Excel. You can launch Acumen Tools from the Sage desktop. You can create shortcuts to web pages. So if I have a a large vendor and I need to, let's say I need to process an order with Cisco or US Foods or another big, Office Depot or something like that, and I want to launch their web portal. I can launch that directly from the Sage desktop. I can set up custom folders and group icons if I want to. I can rename the icons, and I can even change the background or add links to the website or maybe a company intranet that I might be interested in. So let's take a look at that. So again, I have to have rights to do so, and I may want to create a folder here called Nick. So I come up to the top. I like to put it at the very top here, and I'll right-click and I'll say New Folder. And it's alphabetical, so I always put 2 dots in front so it goes up to the top, but certainly not something you have to do. And I'll say Nick and finish, and it will go into the system here. So now I have a folder that I can put some information in. So I can go and say, okay, let's right-click and do a new icon, or maybe I'm in charge of that vendor activity. Again, I take the call, so I'm going to drag that over and just drop it in. So now vendor activity is in there. If I want to right-click and do new program, I can say AP vendor add, and I can say, okay, this is a program now, so I have to browse out to that program. So I'm going to go to my Acumen Tools folder, and I'm going to say AP, and I'm going to say AP vendor import, open, and finish. I can browse. I can right-click and change the icon. If I don't like that question mark there, I can pick something really neat and something really fancy if I want to. There it is, the diamond, and say okay, and I can launch any program, any Excel file that I'm using to do journal entry backup. This one happens to be an Acumen tool. I can launch that right from the Sage 300 system. So it's going to launch that Excel file and open up my import vendor screen for me. So you can do a lot from there. We see clients launching Outlook, opening email, doing all sorts of different programs and launching them from there. And of course, also putting macros or reports shortcuts in as well when we have custom ones done for you. Now, a lot of the users on the call or on this webinar might know that. One that we don't see used very often is if I make a custom folder and I call it Startup, one word, S-T-A-R-T-U-P, anything I place into that folder will launch immediately when I log into Sage 300. So if I want my user to run the age trial balance and really keep an eye on that, the age payable, I might drag that down into my startup folder. And then what happens is when I log in to the company, and I'll log in again over here, anything in that startup folder, there's my schedule and there's my age payables report. So if you wanted to have a program launch right away, maybe your daily income journal import file, you want to launch again a web page for a supplier, you want to launch Outlook or an Excel file you use all the time, put it in your startup folder and it will launch automatically. And I just want to note that when you're making these changes to your Sage desktop, you're only changing things for yourself. So it remembers by user and saves all these settings by user. So if I was to log in, on Jen's machine as Nick, it looks the way I left it, not the way Jen left it. And there's one exception to this, and that's when I'm doing new folder or new report, there is an all users tick box. And if I turn that on, that will make that icon or folder or shortcut for all users. So sometimes that's necessary, sometimes that's not, but just keep in mind that when it is turned on for all users, if one user deletes it, it is gone for all users. It's always connected to all users. Okay, and then lastly, we talked about the ability to say rename icons. So in the properties there, if I want to say, okay, AP vendor add, I want to right click and go to properties, and we'll call this the Acumen tool AP vendor import. Okay, so I can right click and go to properties and change the title, change the icon as you saw, and set it to be a little bit more informational for myself. Okay, this is a newer feature of Sage 300, something called visual process flows. And we don't see it as adopted as much as we think it should be. It's been around for maybe 4 years or so now. So most of the clients on the call, if you're on a relatively recent version, you should have this. Let me show you the power of it. Basically, they've taken each of the different modules, say accounts payable, and each of the sections, and kind of flattened it out. What I mean by that is under AP, I might have to go into transactions to do an invoice, or and go into payments. I might go into vendors to set something up, so I can kind of click around. Well, I can also assign a user a visual process flow here to say, okay, this is how we want you to work through the process. And okay, you're going to enter vendor invoices. So of course, these are links that launch invoice entry. I want to look up vendor records or modify vendors. So of course, I launch the vendor screen. So you can right click and edit these. So you can add custom programs in, custom macros, shortcuts to other things, of course. You can change all the backgrounds and make it look nice and add different settings. It's another great way to give people rights to all of, say, the AP reports or the reports for that module, but then really only limit the ones that they can actually click on. So I might give them all the setup reports or something, and maybe I only want them to click on 2 of them, so I can just include 2 on their visual process flow. We've even seen clients go so far as to create a process flow for a group of users, drag this bar over, and lock down the ability for users to customize their desktop, and they log into a really nice, clean screen. So, and just to give you another quick example of one, we do have a lot of clients in the hospitality industry. So, one we did is called our hospitality visual process flow. This is just a sample for, say, Sage Hospitality here. And it's a sample management company dashboard where I might have, my button to launch my daily income journal from ProfitSage, and this launches the Acumen import from ProfitSage, or I might launch my Birch Street integration from here, or my FinTech, or I might want to do cross-property GL listing or cross-company. So again, just a way to kind of show you how you can add custom buttons into that visual process flow. And again, everything we can do to make each user's life a little bit faster, a little bit easier, a little bit better is beneficial. So taking the time to lay out the process for them can help. And that's something that our consultants can certainly help you guys do. Okay, Finder options. Now, I'm sure everyone on the call has used the Finder, and we talked about how to launch the Finder using our F5 key. But what you may not know, or you may not have seen lately is here. Let's go to vendors again, because there are a lot of options in the vendor. I'm going to maximize my screen, and I'm going to hit F5 to launch my Finder. Well, maybe I like to search for my vendors by vendor name. I don't know the numbers, but I like to do vendor name, and you can see it set that way. Well, that is stored each time I do a search by user, by company, by Finder. So if I like to search by vendor name and I set that, when I come back in, it's automatically going to be that way for me. If I like to search by vendor number or short name or address, and for some reason I remembered everyone's fax number from 2000, I can search that way. So each user can set this up the way they want. Now, you can see that when I launch the Finder, my cursor is right here in the filter automatically, and that allows me to just start typing and search for something. If you notice that your cursor is here in the grid, meaning this is, and then you have to come and click up into the filter and then start typing, you can go to Global Settings and turn on Go to Filter First. And what that does is now when I launch the Finder again, you can see my cursor is back up here and I can just start typing and do a search for my Finder. If I want to search for something that I don't see in my grid here or in my Finder, I can come to Settings and Columns at the top. Every single field that is stored in the system is available to turn on. You can turn on up to 50 at a time for any Finder, but if you don't see it, you can scroll down here and find it. And maybe I want to look by the the temporary vendor code or some note that we're putting in. I want to click include and move that over. So now that is over here, and I can set that up. And maybe I want to move that up and down or reorder that using the buttons. I can certainly do that as well. And I say OK. And now if I scroll over here, I should have a note field. Here it is. I do have the note field in the system. And lastly, you can see I did over here. I might want to go to colors and set a particular field to a specific color. Maybe that note is something I want to pop out as well, and I'll make that orange so it's easily identifiable because maybe I scroll and I can't find it, so I can see it there. And again, just like the screen modifications, I can move fields around, I can widen them, I can hide them up. We don't use address line 3 or 4, or I put a count in, but I don't need it. Now I can move things around. I can click and drag things over here. Now, another thing I can do is use this set criteria button to do multiple kind of searches or combo searches. So let's say I work with vendors, but I only work with vendors in the services group here, so the SVC group. So I might go to set criteria, and it opens up this criteria window where I can have all of these fields and set some values and set some filters on them. So I might say, okay, group code, I'll select that because I see that here, that's group code. I click add, and it puts it in to the box down here, this grid, where I can now set some values. So if I double click underneath here, I'm going to say equals, but I could say not equals or like, or greater than or less than if I'm dealing with dollars. But I want to say equals SVC because that's the group that I work with, and I'll type that in. And I'll click save. I always forget to do this. So if you click save, the next time you come in here, it's going to happen automatically for you, and I'll say okay. So now you can see I've very quickly limited the results of my finder to the group that I deal with. And we see clients do this all the time for turning off inactive vendors or inactive GL accounts or things you don't need to necessarily see because you're not focused on them. Well, they're not gone. They're always there. Again, I'm only changing my finder and no one else's. And if I've made a mistake, I can open the criteria again and click clear and say clear all and save it, and everything comes back. So again, there's nothing to really hurt when you're doing that. Okay, let's talk about printing reports now. So everyone is, of course, printing reports. We're all seeing, we're seeing lots and lots of users trying to export reports to Excel, which is great. A lot of the reports do work very nicely. Some are a little tricky because they're written in Crystal reports and they're made to look very nice. Well, here's a few different kind of tips on that. So let's say I'm running a GL transaction, a trial balance rather, and I'm going to run that here. And I'll run it for the year 2020 because that's when my sample data is, and I'll just click print and run this to screen. And I'm sure this is something you do all the time, and you can print it off, of course, and you can export it. So I can export it to PDF or Excel or XML files or rich text. I'm sure you do dump it out to Excel all the time. Now, this field here, we get a lot of questions on. If I leave it as a disk file, what that means is I have to select a place for the file to be exported to. It will export it there, whether that's my computer or the server, and I can browse over and open it. Well, most of the time, if I'm exporting, I probably want to work with it right away. So what we recommend is to select application here and click OK, and go ahead and go through your options there. But what it'll do is it'll launch Excel right away and dump that file right in so I can start to work with it. Now, the trial balance is a report that exports quite nicely, but maybe I don't really want any of this. Maybe I want to build a pivot table, or I've done a bunch of different reports or a bunch of different accounts, and it's too big. I want to get rid of some of this kind of header information. Again, these are all Crystal reports, so they're really designed to look pretty. So if you go back to export for a moment, look for an option called Data Only, Microsoft Excel Data Only, and click OK. And you'll see the difference is it's going to strip off headers, header information, page information, totals, and I'm left with a much cleaner Excel file here, really raw data that I can work with. Now, it won't work, it's not every single report. There are still some that probably have multiple lines that you might need to deal with, but this could be a really good option to get you much closer to a report that you're looking to export or work with. Now, also, when you're running reports here, let's say I am in charge of that services group, and I have to run the aged payables report very often, and I need to run it for either a range of vendors or a vendor group. And again, I do SBC services to SBC. And I have to click print and run that. And every time I come in, I have to do that, and I want to sort it by group code, and I want a total. Well, instead of having to click all those all the time, take a look up at the top of the menu, and most reports have this, but I can go to settings and save the settings as defaults. And then when I come into that report again next time, all of those things are turned on for me, and all I have to do is change my date and click print. So I can really take away all of those extra clicks. And we've even seen some clients do something like this, where I'll right-click and I'll copy an icon, and I'll right-click and paste it. And I've done that already here. I go in and rename it. So this will be my aged payables for the services group. And maybe I leave this one here to all my defaults. That's the can one. But I make a custom report here for myself for the services group. And I open this one up, and I've already saved that vendor group services to services. So you can kind of make some custom reports for yourself. You can do that. I've seen that in the transaction listing in the GL for just a certain department or division or cost center. I've seen that in aged payables a lot, or aged receivables, all kinds of different reports. You can see save those settings rather, so that you can run it a lot faster. Now, lastly, we'll talk about print destination, but up here I see there's a print destination window, and everyone can click on that, and a lot of people have it set to preview or printer, so you get your output right away. But just know that you can print something directly to a file, or if you do have email on your machine or on your server environment, you can print directly to email, and it will launch an email and attach the file automatically for you, and allow you to just use your address book and send that off right away. You don't have to send it out to a particular file, launch your email, and run it and attach it and send it off. Okay, now we'll go back to the PowerPoint here and talk about a few newer features. First one is something called Notes, and this came out in 2017 or 2018. And now Sage allows you to track notes for customers, vendors, and inventory items. And you can see here it pops up next to my vendor screen or customer screen, and I can put in notes. I can have reminders. I can say, when is this note active? I can say it cannot be dismissed by certain users or any user, and I can say track who modifies it. This is a great vendor, always delivers on time, and you can set that up. So really nice little feature. You don't have to use optional fields for that anymore, because you're limited in optional fields. There really is no limit here to the length of a note, and you can also do some formatting and stuff to make it nice big font for your users to look at. Next is a big new feature. So under the hood, Sage has been working on something called global search, and this is now available in version 2019. And what happens is now I can do a search for something, some word, some phrase, and it will search across the entire Sage system and pull up all transactions or static data, and any type of vendor, customer, GL accounts, and anything you want in the system, and show me that result. And let's take a quick look at that. That's going to be up at the top here. Again, this is in 2019, and I click on global search, and it's going to launch the global search window for me. I'm going to go ahead and just maximize that. And now, by default, it's searching everything, but I can choose which transactions I want. Do I want AP? Do I want AR? And I search for something like sales and hit enter. And it's going to go find, here's where I typed in sales department in the entry description. Here is a customer number, web customer for web customer sales. So I can go through and use wildcards as well, and hyphens and asterisks and quotes rather to find specific phrases and help me search for things. So pretty powerful new feature available in 2019. So next we're going to get into something we call Acumen Tools. And this is a suite of import tools, automation tools using Sage Intelligence and a combination of Sage Intelligence and our import tools, and then also some some reporting tools using Sage Intelligence that our internal development teams have written for end users to really increase efficiencies and really, again, make their lives better. The Acumen Tools is a suite, a few different suites, and we do have a very small kind of subscription for them that we charge for use of them. But I'm just going to give you a quick flavor of some of them and show you how they work. So in the Import Tools suite, we've built imports for all of the static data. So if you have to add vendors to, a multi-company situation, or you need to add an account across multiple companies, or you want to do journal entries across one company or multiple companies, and you want to use another tab to maybe do some calculations, you might want to use the Acumen Import Tools. And we have bank imports, customer imports, static data for sales tax if you need to change sales tax rates, AP group codes, you can clean up your groups for vendors, or AR group codes for customers. So most of the screens, we're up to about 30 different import tools now. The automation tools are a little bit more complex in that they're geared to help you during your month-end close, where we do have a lot of clients in the hospitality industry, and we might want to speed up close and say, okay, I need to pull in some revenue figures or cost figures, whatever you need to use, and I need to do some calculation to calculate an accrual. And then on the next tab, I have an import tool set up so that I can see my journal entry, click import, and it will push it back up to the Sage 300 system automatically for me. And then lastly, the reporting tools are a suite of Sage Intelligence tools, Sage Intelligence reports rather, that kind of enhance the canned reports. So we have GL transaction listing with slicers and filters. We have multi-company reports, and I'll show you a few examples of those. So again, this is a suite of tools that we built for the users out there. And when you subscribe to them, whichever bundle you select, you get access to all of those different tools, and you can use them. And as we add new ones and update them, we send them out to anyone that's on that subscription. So let's take a look at those and talk about what they are. So we talked about AP vendors here, right? So here is the AP vendors. AP vendors, MC stands for multi-company. This can be for single company as well, of course, but let's say I need to add US foods across 6 databases or 10 databases. So I have my database ID column here where I can fill that in. I can enter my vendor basically one time, and you see all these fields that you should be familiar with: US Foods, vendor number, vendor name, vendor group, legal name, including optional fields. So if we need some, this sample data, I have optional fields set up for some routing information for maybe Orchid EFT or something like that. I can include optional fields. As I fill that out, I can come down and say, okay, I'm going to do this for company 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever database IDs I need to, and then I can just copy and paste my vendor as many times as I need. When I click import, and this is going to fail because I want to show you some validation, but I click import, and it's going to do some checking for me. It's going to make sure I have the rights to do what I'm trying to do in all the companies that I'm trying to add this vendor to. Maybe I'm not allowed to go into Sample Company Limited, or maybe I've created a new vendor group, which I did here. I don't have the F&B vendor group set up, so it's going to get mad at me there and give me a warning saying that I can't enter that. I'm just going to close down some of our other global searches here because I've ended up with a whole bunch of screens open, and it's going to get mad that I can't import that here for that particular vendor. Now we have GL imports. So you want to do a journal entry import here. We say, okay, fine. Do you need to import a journal entry or a series of journal entries to multiple different companies? Again, this one's multi-company, so it has the database ID column. Up at the top here, do I want this to be an auto-reversing entry? Yes or no, so it'll tick the box for you. Do I want this to auto-post, or do I want this to be an open entry when I import it? No, I don't. I want to check it here and get it approved, and I'll say, okay, yeah, when I import this, I want it to automatically post. Then again, I can come down and enter my database ID, and I can go and enter my journal entries. And we've seen plenty of clients, come over to another sheet and do some calculations here and figure out what they need to do over here, use VLOOKUPs or something and map it back here and check their journal entry and click import. And we've also helped plenty of clients do that where we combine a report, here on a backup sheet or a sub-schedule, and that links over the journal entry, and then you can just go ahead and import that to Sage 300. And then lastly, here is just an example of one of the Acumen reporting tools. This is the multi-company GL transaction listing. And I have just a very basic example of it. It's not very pretty, but what I want you to see here is up at the top, I have, again, all of my databases, so I can switch back and forth, or I can include all of them if I want to. If I include all of them, you can see all the transactions for this particular account. And again, I'm using a pivot table. This is pure Excel once I get the data in here. And I can see all the transactions for that account for both companies that have been entered, showing my beginning balance. If I can click with my mouse here, the reference, the description of that transaction, the opening balance and the amount and the closing balance. And then again, I can further drill in there if I want to. So basically taking your GL transaction listing and going across multiple companies. We've done the same thing for AP aging, AR aging. We have GL transaction listings with Excel slicers and really using pivot tables and the power of Excel to help the users really scroll through and work with the data and find what they want, because we can very easily pull information into Excel across multiple databases in the Sage environment. Okay, now with that, I want to leave some time for questions, and we have about 10 minutes to do so. I'm going to turn it over to Max, and he'll kind of take us through there.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nick. Thanks again, everyone, for watching. Remember, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat window, and we'll read your question out loud before answering. Or if you prefer, just email us at am@acumenfl.com. It looks like we have a couple of questions coming in. I'm going to go ahead and start. The first one is, I really like the global search feature. When will version 2019 be available?
Okay, that's a really good question. So 2019 is available, has been released. Typically, we like to wait for the very first round of service packs to come out before we start rolling it out to our clients. But that is due in the next month or so, and the account management team will start reaching out to clients and getting that on the calendar. And when you're ready, you certainly can reach out to us in advance using that email address you see there, am@acumenfl.com. That goes to your account management team. And if you want to get that on the calendar sooner than later, let's talk about that, and we will help you get that planned out and scheduled.
Cool. Next one. Great webinar, Nick. Do you offer any custom training courses?
Actually, yes, we do. We have lots of clients in various different industries, and we do offer custom training classes where we'll cover, say, accounts payable or just general ledger, and clients can attend those different sessions and get a more kind of general background training on something. And I don't know why, but as we've now expanded up north with our recent acquisition of the SystemLink group, a lot of those clients up north, and now we're headquartered in Orlando here, start coming to our office in January and February as it gets colder. That seems to be a trend that's happening. So not sure why that is, though.
Okay, cool. Next question. How do you add websites or links to the desktop version?
That's a good question. So that one you might need your kind of IT admin or one of our consultants to help you with, but the background here behind all these buttons is just an HTML page. And up here at the top, you can add those very quickly. It is HTML, but it's something you can copy and paste, but it's something very easy that we can help with, or as I said, your IT folks can help you do. And a lot of clients have put maybe a link to our support desk here, so if your user gets stuck, you can click on support.acumenfl.com and launch our BOMGAR window so you can connect our consultant, or as I said, your company intranet, or other things like that. Now, if you want to put a web page for maybe your supplier, down here, you don't need our help. You can go out to program, right-click new program, and say this is a US Foods web page. And I can browse to the executable for Chrome or Internet Explorer, so wherever that is. So mine would be in C program files. And again, we can help you with this, or IT can help you with this. But if I find Google Chrome, I can launch that. So I have to find the executable file, and then I can fill in the working directory. This might be www.usfoodsinc.com. I don't know their website, but something like that. So that's also pretty easy to do.
Okay. Once you post the banking for the month, can you unpost it?
No, you cannot unpost a bank rec. You can certainly do reversing entries for bank entries, but once I post and I have say now this transaction has cleared or been reversed, I cannot unpost a monthly bank reconciliation, unfortunately.
Okay, I don't see any more questions on the Q&A, but if you have emailed in any questions, know that we'll get them to you as soon as possible. Also, the link to the webinar will be available shortly. As soon as we've edited the webinar and uploaded it to our YouTube, we can send that link out to anybody that would like it.
Okay, here's a few more questions coming in. And will the global search go through all companies? So they are just working on that now. Right now it is one company at a time, but that is definitely not something on their on the radar, on the roadmap for next versions. But for 2019, it is one company at a time. Where do you go to add a note to a customer, vendor, etc.? So, and when I go into a vendor screen here, and it's not showing up at the moment, but let me go back to the PowerPoint. So a window will show up right next to vendors if I have a new note to add. I can launch it here up at the top as well. Something's happened with my data at the moment, and it won't launch, but it shows up right next to that vendor screen. There we go, sorry. So it looks like this. And I can say create a new note. For the transaction you just showed, the GL transaction reporting tool, are you able to see both sides of the entry if you filter by the reference, voucher number? So yes, in the GL transaction listing across multiple companies, so this is a pivot table. So the way I have it grouped now is by company, but I could absolutely just drag this around. The beauty of these pivot tables is if I don't want it by account and I want to get rid of that and dump that back in here, and I do want it by reference or description instead, I can absolutely do that. And I can say this one should be before, and so I can group them by the row labels. And so here's descriptions or reference. Maybe let's just get that out of there so I don't see that together. And I group them however I want to. So absolutely, and it's very easy to do. And a lot of clients will help them, build the raw data bits and get everything in here for you, and do a little bit of training on a pivot table. But then you can see it truly is all drag and drop. And if I say, okay, that's how I like it, great. Or no, maybe I want the values to be grouped, or I want reference to be in my filter up here, so I can go into reference and I can say includes web cust or something like that. So I type web cust, yep, there it is, and include all the transactions that include web cust. There's probably nothing in that particular year period, but I can do that. Can we get a list of all the data entry shortcuts, or is it saved somewhere where we can access it? We'll certainly send out a list. Also this webinar, these slides and stuff, we're going to post up on our YouTube channel, and you can certainly look at that. But if you want to, we do have a cheat sheet on that. Just shoot us a quick email at the am@AcumenFL email box, and we will gladly send out a list of those shortcuts. Okay, are we able to copy a journal entry batch? I know we're just running up on the hour here, so if anyone does have to log off, please feel free to, but we'll stay on for a few more minutes here. Our team to certainly answer a few more questions because I see a few more coming in. Are we able to copy a journal entry batch? So this is a good one, and then we're gonna get this in, and we had to cut some of this out to make it fit in an hour, but we do have a tools and tips and tricks class that we're going to talk about specifically for the transactional modules. And I'll just show you this one because the question came in. But if I go to a batch list here, and I have a couple different ways I can copy a particular entry. I can go into this particular entry and I can go File, Export, and export that particular entry to Excel, and then just File, import it back in to a new batch. When I have that new here, I can File, import, and browse my Excel file and bring it back in. So that's one way to do it fairly quickly and fairly easily. Another way to do it, and this only is a specific case, but whenever I'm on a posted transaction here, so here's a batch that has been posted. It has 16 entries in it, and if I open this one up, because it has been posted, I can click the reverse button. And this is actually going to reverse the entry. And I understand that's not the exact question, but we do get a lot of questions of how do I quickly reverse an entry? Well, I can do that, and I can reverse just this entry, number one, or I can reverse the entire batch. And I can come down and select a new batch or where I want that batch to go, and I can process it. But what happens, we say someone gets this batch posted and forgets to update, or they use the wrong GL account in 6 of the entries or something like that. So we say, okay, just process the whole batch, reverse it, and post that. So you get a reversal batch down here, and I'll go down to the end. And now I have the exact opposite batch, the same entries, and I can post that batch. And then I can actually reverse the posted batch, the reversal batch. And I get the original batch, and I can just fix those accounts or fix that description or fix the dates, whatever I need to do. So, a lot of times we'll say that, and kind of the light bulb goes on and say, oh, wow, yeah, I didn't realize I could reverse the reversal, and end up with an unposted version of the original batch that I can now modify. Can you reprint a prior bank reconciliation? So the answer is absolutely yes to that. So we can go into the bank rec module here, into the transactions reports, and go to my reconciliation posting journal. And as long as you haven't cleared it, I don't have any to print, but you can reprint based on your posting journal number any reconciliation that's saved in the system. Okay, do all the versions have visual process flows? So visual process flows go back to 2014 or 2016. So the last 3 or 4 versions absolutely have visual process flows in them, and they've been adding more and more with each new version. Can you sort transactions by amount or date or description? You can sort transactions by amount or date description in any of your custom reports. So in any of these types of GL transaction listings, you can do any kind of sorting that you want in here using pivot tables, sorts, filters, values, rows, and groupings. I can always sort anything I want in here. So the easiest place to do that is in the reporting section. The report that was shown was a clean version. Can you show how to handle a report that isn't so clean, such as vendor transaction report? We did data only and it still had issues. So, a vendor transaction report is definitely one of those ones that's not perfect because it does have the vendor number up on a different line. So a lot of times that is, again, that isn't one that's perfect. And if you dump it out to Excel, let's just say go here and run this. If we dump it out to Excel, it doesn't always line up perfectly as the one attendee has pointed out. Sometimes that's one that's best done as a custom report in Sage Intelligence for you, and that's something we can help with, or you guys could take on if you're comfortable with Sage Intelligence. And really, exporting data only doesn't help because the vendor number, it's actually a grouped report, and all the documents are underneath that. So unfortunately, that one, you can get rid of the headers and things and the totals and subtotals, excuse me, but because the vendor is there on a different line, we can also customize the crystal report. You do have the ability to do that, where we can put the vendor, get rid of the group, and put the vendor number on each record if you want to. So then you can actually export it and do that. Okay, another one. Can you reverse a journal entry from a closed period into the current period? Yes, you can. I can always reverse something from a closed or locked period. I cannot post it back into that closed or locked period until, unless that was open, but I can reverse one into the current period. Absolutely, yes. Okay, I don't see any more coming in here. We'll hang on for just a moment or two and see if anything else pops up in the Q&A or the chat. Okay, I don't see anything else coming in again. So again, here's our contact information. Any questions about Sage 300, any questions about Sage, any questions about upgrading or Acumen Tools, please feel free to give us a call or email us at am@acumenfl.com. We're going to start doing bi-weekly webinars for you to get you education and tips and tricks and things like that. Just again, thank you very much for watching, and let us know what you'd like to see on next webinars. The next one is going to be December 28th, and because it's Wednesday and we have to be Webinar Wednesday compliant. So again, thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks again.